This is experiment setup on the Fortessa X-20 using the Diva software. When you arrive at the Fortessa, it should be in standby, low. There should be a tube of water on the zip, and if you come during business hours, 8 to 5, it should be on and ready to go. There will be a different video for after hours use. The first thing you want to do is scan the QR code to log into the iLab kiosk. This is how we track your time on the instrument. You just scan the code, it will take you to the iLab page, log in with your net ID, and hit the start button. And when you're finished, you just hit the finish button, and that saves me a lot of time doing the billing. Next thing we're going to do is log into the computer. The computer should be on. The computer password and the are posted on the computer. This is the icon for the BD Fax Diva software. If it's not open already, you want to double click on it. Then you will have a core-assigned username and password. You will find your password, your account, and password sign. So first, to talk about some of the different windows. This is the browser window, just sort of a file browser. This is where your different experiments will be. The cytometer window gives you information about the cytometer. The inspector window gives you information and options regarding whatever you're clicked on. The acquisition dashboard will have your acquisition controls, your storage gate, and your stopping gate, and we will go over those. And the worksheet, that's where you'll put all your plots. Now we need to create an experiment, and there are 3 ways to do that. One is to click on this book icon, New Experiment. It created a new experiment. The second way is to go to the top toolbar and say Experiment, New Experiment, and this brings up a list of experiment templates. So you can create an experiment template once you have your experiment just the way you like it. And if you'll be doing multiple repeats of that experiment, it's a quick way to get started. You don't have to start over every time. And we'll show you how to save an experiment template later. But I recommend that you label it with your initials at the beginning. That way you can find it easily. So we're going to just pick a template. And if you open that, you see that you already have tubes, and you have a global worksheet here, and your voltages are set the way you want them to be set. So that is another way to create a new experiment. The third way, you can right-click and duplicate without data. Now it's okay to do that a couple of times, but if you keep repeating duplicate without data, your files can become corrupted. So I don't recommend doing it very often. And you can use the duplicate without data on any of the features in the browser. You can duplicate without data tubes, you can duplicate without data specimens. So it's a nice feature. We're going to delete these two experiments and just start with a blank experiment. So first of all, we want to name this experiment. We can double click to open it, and you can either rename it here, or you can, I like to use the inspector window. If you click on here, you see we can change the experiment name here. It's always a good idea to put the date and just a name for your experiment so you'll know what it is at a glance. Now we're going to add, we're going to click on this syringe icon, and that will create a new specimen. A specimen is just sort of like a folder where you can have tubes. You add tubes with the tube button, and I recommend that you add all your tubes first. Okay. And name them. This has a feature, like if you had if you have at least 3 digits, an underscore and at least 3 digits, if you click next to, it will continue the series. So that's a nice feature as well. If you had different tissue types, you could make different specimens for each tissue type. And so add all of your tubes. Then we're going to go to the cytometer window, and this tells us all the parameters that we have available. We have forward and side scatter, and these are all the fluorescent parameters. The name is the default name. Other dyes may read in the same filter, so you must know which laser excites your dyes and which filter you expect the peak signal. Now, these are voltages which are applied to the PMT to amplify the signal. They're set by our daily CST, or cytometer setup and tracking, as optimal voltages. And by optimal, they mean that you can distinguish a dim signal from the electronic noise. So these are usually good places to start, with 2 exceptions. These voltages are set for beads, and you will probably be running cells. So for cells, a good place to start is 200, so I like to just start everything somewhere around 200. And we will adjust these using your cells, but we're just going to start at 200. Now this log just refers to if you like a log scale or a linear scale on your plots to view your data. Now forward and side scatter, you can use linear for forward and side scatter. Some people prefer side scatter log, and it is just mostly a personal preference. I prefer side scatter log, but if you like linear, that's just fine. For fluorescent parameters, you want to make sure always to use a log scale unless you're doing cell cycle analysis and looking at DNA with DNA dyes. In that case, you will want to uncheck your uncheck this box and use a linear scale. This A, H, and W refer to the area, height, and width of the electronic signal pulse. So you want to go ahead and check the height and width for forward and side scatter. If you check these parameters, you can use height and width versus height versus area or width to distinguish doublets. If you do not check the height and width of the signal pulse, then you cannot make a single cell gate. So just get in the habit of always doing that. Now, you don't have to, if you have a 3-color experiment, you can delete some of these parameters, and that makes your file size smaller. And so I recommend it if you, let's just say we have PE, APC, and BV and FTSE. Well, that didn't work. So there's 2 ways to do this. You can delete the ones you don't want, or you can just select everything. Delete, and then just add the ones that you have. That may be a little simpler. So FTSE, and add another one. There's a drop down. PE, add APC. Now, I also recommend that you leave one violet channel open. The reason for that is that autofluorescence is often high for a lot of cells in the violet region. And if you leave one channel open, you can use auto spill compensation in FlowJo to extract autofluorescence. If you don't leave an open channel, then you won't have that option. So I'm going to add a BV510 as just an open channel. Or if you know that your cells have high autofluorescence in a particular channel, you can use whatever channel that is. Let's see. So there is a way to import a CSV file if you have a lot of tubes, and the format is in our training PowerPoint. And I can give that to you if you have a lot of, it must be a completely empty experiment, and you just open the experiment, file, import CSV, and if it's in the appropriate format, then it will just populate your specimen and tubes, and that is, so you don't have to do all that typing. Here is the format that it should be in. All right, so we're gonna name our tubes. I'm gonna have a specimen for spleen. This all right, now I have tubes, and I have a specimen with tubes, and they're named. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to populate my worksheet with plots and some preliminary gates. These are your plot tools here, a dot plot, a contour or density plot, and a histogram plot. These zoom in or out of a plot. This makes the plot larger or smaller. These are your gating tools right here. So let's make a very simple analysis to get started. So we want to start with a forward scatter and a side scatter area. I'm going to make, if you click on this, it'll give you options in the inspector window. I'm going to make 2 pages so I have plenty of room. Show the page breaks. Next I'm going to draw, these are your gating tools. Now these 2 on this end are sort of automated gates, and these 2 on this end are automated gates, and I tend not to use those because I want to draw my own gates. This is a polygon, a rectangle, quadrant, and an interval gate. So I'm going to draw a roughly oval polygon gate. And this is we're going to use this gate, so we can move this gate around. We'll move it where we want it later, but right now we're going to put cleanup gates. So with this first gate, we'll separate what we think are our main cell population from debris on the far left side, and dead cells, and then aggregates. And this gate we can make larger by holding down the shift key and grabbing a corner. You can make it larger or smaller. You can move it wherever you need to. So we're just going to go ahead and make a gate. So if I right click on this plot, I'm going to say show population hierarchy. So this is going to make sure that our gates are subsets of each other. So if we're clicked on P1, the next gate we create will be a subset of P1. But I don't like to leave anything unlabeled. So I'm going to call this my cell gate. So the next gate you may have is going to be a live dead gate. So we're going to put side scatter, and we're going to say our live dead is APC. Actually, I'm going to use a contour plot for that. So here we have a contour plot, and we're going to make side scatter area by APC. And if we're clicked on this plot, we can see options for this plot. So I recommend that you click by exponential display. This allows you to see events below 0. But first we're going to, what happened to my name? I'm going to name this Now, as a subset of our cell gate by scatter, I'm going to make a live cell gate. So your live cells will be on the low end of the fluorescence scale because they should not take up the dye. So these are going to be our live cells. And the next cleanup gate that we need is going to be a single cell gate. So we will, we want to make this a contour. This is a contour plot, but if you go to this tab, you can make it a density plot. So we'll make it a density plot. Next, we're going to make a single cell gate. And typically that is forward scatter area versus forward scatter height. You can use any iterations of forward scatter area or side scatter area versus height, or area versus width, or height versus width. Yes. Area versus height or width versus height. Play around with it and see which way that you can best discriminate your doublets. Your gate will probably look something like this. The single cells will be in a diagonal line here, and anything with a greater area is going to be an aggregate or doublet. So we're going to call this single cells. Now we've made our cleanup gates. And then my next rule is you need one plot for every fluorophore. And you want to display at least live single cells on that plot. So that's another thing we can do. If we click on this plot and then look at the inspector window, this is going to tell us which population is displayed on this plot. So for our first one, we want to display all events. For our live cell, if we click on this plot, the default is all events, but we want to display the parent population, which is cells by scatter. And then on this plot, we want to display live cells. Then we're going to make, you can make a dot plot. We can put both of our fluorophores on one plot. We can make histograms for each one, if you like. You can also duplicate plots. And then just change the axis. So these we can leave ungated, but we want to make sure, oops. So there is an undo button. Undo, delete elements. Okay, there we go. So if I choose all of these plots, I can select, I want to see single cells on all these plots. Now we've set up some cleanup gates, and we have one plot for every fluorophore. And you don't have to have your whole analysis scheme on your plot, on your worksheet, but I recommend cleanup gates, and then display, if you have a rare cell population that you're very interested in, gate down to that population and make sure that you can see it. So if you do this, you just want to make sure that everything looks as expected and that you can see and collect enough of your cells of interest. It's also a good idea to create a fluorescence versus time plot. So time, and it doesn't matter which channel it is. And we're going to go to our options for the plot and say auto scaling of time parameters and make this a cumulative display. So this will allow you to make sure you don't have air bubbles in your sample. It will look like a ribbon. And if there are any gaps in there, you know you have some sort of problem. It could be a clog or air or something, and you'll know that you'll have to clean your data later on. Here's an example of some bad data. And here's an example of a completed worksheet. So you have your forward and side scatter here. We've eliminated debris and aggregates. Here's your single cell gate. We've eliminated doublets. Here's the live cell gate. We've eliminated the dead cells. And here we're looking at two different fluorophores. And here's our time plot. So that is a nice worksheet. Next, we're going to talk about labeling your data using the experiment layout. So the first tab allows you to add labels to your fluorophores, which I recommend. These, I've added all these. We can, if you want to add a label, you just type one in. Let's just say, I'm making up a CD 700, let's just say. So then you add it to the list. And then if you highlight this, where is it? CD 100, 700, then you assign it. So this will now, you'll say, you know that your FTSE reagent is a reagent for CD 700, and it will appear on the axes of all the plots that have FTSE, and it is also attached to your FCS file and will go with you to your analysis software. I also recommend, if this is not really APC, but it reads in the APC channel, that you, such as Alexa Fluor 647, that you put that information in there as well. And then this was, we can add that to the list, and then assign it. And then this was our autofluorescence channel, and you can call that AF for autofluorescence, assign that. This was our live dead. But this is just an example. So label all of your fluorophores. We'll just pick another one. And next we're going to go to keywords. Now keywords can come in very handy. They are attached to your FCS files. There are different types. These are admin created. So if we added, if you select all of these, and we're going to add tissue SS, that means selectable string. So we're going to assign that. Now, there'll be a drop down and you can select which tissue type it is. So when you're sorting your data, later on when you have an Excel spreadsheet, this comes in very handy. And then the SN means a selectable numeric. So if you had different time points, this keyword allows you to put all of your data on one plot and look at it, different samples together on one plot and look at it. So we're going to add a time points selectable numeric. We're going to assign that, and then you would give it a value from 1 to 10, and you would have to know, what condition or time point each one of those stood for. So this is a very useful feature. You can create any keywords that would be useful to you. And the final tab is where you're going to set up your stopping criteria. First, you have to Even if you have only one global worksheet, you have to tell the computer which global worksheet. Then you could say, then you pick your stopping gate. So we want live single cells. If you are collecting immune cells out of like a kidney or something like that, you could set your stopping gate at CD45. Whatever is important to you, this is where you make sure that you collect enough events. Well, the storage gate, generally, you want to always keep all events. And then events to record, here's where you set that. And you can use this drop down here. So we're going to say 50,000. And here's an example of how you can put different, if you use the numeric keywords, you can put different samples on the same plot.